what that does mean is when I do go and review the Crosshair, if it is any good, it should be better than this. Rather than me doing the CPU review on the Crosshair and just trying to tell you that it's amazing and worth 250 quid out the box, I don't think I would be able to say that absolutely straight away. I think there would need to be some grounds to it and me to actually be able to substantiate my claims. So I've actually gone against advice from AMD. Well, AMD specifically asked me to use the Crosshair and I told them no, and I said I was going to use this one. Might seem a bit backwards to you, but it's just the way that I've always done my reviews. It also does mean that after reviewing the 1800X, if I go to the Crosshair and I can overclock it a bit more, or the memory is a bit higher, it then gives me something to say to you, well, at that price point you get this, but at the more expensive price point you get that. So I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. It's up to totally everybody else if they want to do it, but we've gone for that. We've also got in here where this is 2666 memory, and it's Corsair LPX, but I've also got 2800, 3000, 3000, 3000, 3200. I've got a whole selection of memory speeds, Crucial, Kingston. I've got G-Skill. So there's a lot of brands that I've been through and used some of these as well, so I can talk to you a lot about that in a minute. M.2, we're using the Corsair MP500 on this one. Cooling is the H110i GT, and as you can see, as I said to you before, even though this is an AM4 only mount, because the H110i GT actually mounts onto the plastic brackets that come on the motherboard. This one we used to test the Crosshair 5 from before with the AM3s. We just swap the motherboard out, Bosch, we can clip it in. It's only the ones that actually screw into the motherboard that you wouldn't be able to use on going forward. So that's another kind of very visual way to show you that we've used an older cooler on the newer platform and how you can do it. Beyond that point, the only other thing to talk about, and it will come up in a little bit as well when we talk about cooling, is the fact that we're using ML fans. So we've got 140mm ML fans in the roof. All the other ones are 120. But that's not really going to matter. The actual fans for the cooler that you're going to want to know about more than anything else. And when we did the power test as well, we have a HX1000i in the back, and we monitor the power via link. Okay, so Asus BIOS. Now, some of the things are going to be different across the range, but a lot of the bits when we go into the next bit you'll see are different. This is the basic easy mode area where you can set up fan speeds and fan speed profiles. The only thing that we can really talk about here is this DOCP, and this is basically XMP on all of the other boards. It means the same sort of thing, we'll cover it in more depth in a minute. Something that you can see, I've told you about the cooler that we're running, is you can see that we've got a motherboard temperature of 22, 23 degrees, nice. Temperature in the room at the moment is probably about 18 degrees. CPU temperature, but not in the operating system or anything like that, you can see here it's 54 degrees. Again, we will talk to you about that a little bit more in a minute. You can also see up here it says Ryzen 1800X 8 core. Another very visual thing that you can see is that the fact that we're running the Prime X270 Pro and that we're on the 0504 BIOS. This is a public BIOS, it's not a specially tweaked one or anything like that. This should be on the website on the 2nd, I'm told. Right, so there we go. Other thing that we can see here just quickly is the VDD CR CPU volt, which is actually CPU volt. You can see that flicking around the 1.4 volt mark. Now, Intel fanboys are instantly going to go in at that and be on about, oh, the voltage is really high, man. And they'll all be a bit like that, sitting out the back of their camper vans and stuff. You need to stop comparing the two in this respect. They do the same kind of job, but they do it in different kind of ways. So that is our voltage at the moment. Let's just move on and start dealing with it. Anyway, looking at my swangling Claymore, I'm just going to hit F7. And then when we go to F7, it takes us into the advanced mode. This gives us a little bit more, of a spaced out information that we were talking about before. But the most important thing is when we click on to AI Tweaker, and this is where things are slightly different. So, AI Overclock Tuner, normally you'd be able to open that and you'd have auto, you would have XMP, and you would have manual. Now in this one we don't get any manual, you've just got auto and DOCP, which is your XMP. And when you enable that, it enables stuff in exactly the same way that you would have expected with XMP before. Now in some of the other boards you might have a slightly different way, and I'm just focusing on this because this is the one right in front of me. The other things, the reason why we're here, so we can talk about things like custom core ratio and then CPU core ratio. So if you keep an eye on the target CPU speed, if I was to go to 40, that then changes to 4,000 megahertz. 40 times 100, really simple, really sort of simple way to stuff that we've looked at before. If I go back to auto, we go to 3.6. This is where it gets slightly confusing. So if we go into manual, which was really what was missing from the AI overclock tuner at the top, we go into manual, it actually brings up the FID and the DID. Now these do mean some very different things, because it's kind of like, so if I put 200 in here, then straight away up here we can see the CPU speed has gone to 5,000. But this works like a divider stroke multiplier. So if I hit up, the first option we get is 8, so it's 5,000. If I hit up again, 9, you can see it's dropped. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. And then you can see 10, we're now down to 4, isn't it? So 200 FID, 10 DID, that gives us a way to get to 4 gigahertz. Now this isn't the base clock, it's just I've not really been able to get an exact kind of word out of AMD how this works. They've got some stuff in their overclocking guides and stuff, but it doesn't really say what they particularly are in any great depth, and by great depth I mean kind of idiot-proof ways that I can understand. But just to give you a kind of idea, if we were to put this up to 250, not 250, I'm hitting too many keys at once, 250, there we go. We can see 250, 10 is now back to 5 gigahertz again. If we were to go down to this, we can start turning the multiplier up, again it will drop. So you can try different ways to get to the same kind of clock. Rather than it being, for argument's sake, 40, then you can get it this way. The other thing, just to make things really, really confusing, is if we were to go 4 gigahertz here, and then we got 40. Now the little hint here is 40.00, 4 gigahertz. You can do it in quarter increments as well. It's not fixed at all. So you can do 40.25 and then 40.25 at top. And you can see it changing as we work our way up. So rather than one multiplier notch and then another multiplier notch, you can actually do a quarter multiplier notch as well. So you can actually ever so slightly inch your overclock up. So I'm going to stick this back on auto. There we go. So we're on auto, we've just got, and we're at 3.6 gigahertz. When we move down, normally you would see, or I'm used to seeing, a lot more options below this. But we then go straight into DRAM timing control, which has already been set up for us by the DOCP. Digi-VRM, this is where your load line calibration is, and you've got your T-probe and your power phase control, stuff like that. And then the VDDR CR CPU voltage, that is your, basically your V-core that you can set up if you want. And then you've got some other voltages down here, but there's, in all honesty, there's not a great deal that we've got to tweak with in terms of frequency. So it's quite simple in that respect. The other thing that we can just talk about just quickly is the memory speed, and that is your memory speed options. Now obviously it starts really, really low. 1333 megahertz, that's, well, that could have been DDR2 sort of speed. So really for DDR4, I would say you look at 29, 33, 24, 26, 29 and 32. I will talk to you in more depth about actual memory speeds and stuff at the moment, but this board at this present moment in time, I've not been able to get above 2666. The Crosshair 6, I've heard from some of my system integrator friends that they are managing to be able to get 2933, but you can see the absolute bottom on this is 3200 megahertz. Now this could be a board thing. I'm going to guess that the 2666 and the fact that I can't get above this at the moment is an early BIOS problem, you know, with the board itself. I don't think it's a CPU problem at all. I do think it could be something to do with the fact that the Crosshair is such a high-end board. There's £100 between the prices. This one is £150, the Crosshair is £250. There's a huge difference just to be able to go up to 29.33. It's another reason why I chose more of a cost-effective board to talk to you about at the start, because it's going to be, I would assume, the sort of thing that's going to be the price range that most of you are going to want to buy. The other thing that we need to think about is a lot of people are going to go, oh, my mate with such and such is running 3200 megahertz or 3600 megahertz. Again, totally different platforms going about things in totally different ways. We just need to focus on what Ryzen can do at the moment, because at this present moment in time, if we were to try comparing to some of the other stuff, the only real one that we can compare with would have been the Crosshair 5, which was DDR3, and 2666 is way above what that could have done, so I think that's the best way to look at it. We will look at memory speed and performance and stuff like that and the BIOS in a minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, we're going to go back to auto, and I'm going to clear the BIOS, load optimize defaults, and then we're just going to boot and go to the desk. Okay, so yes, I am filming the screen, but it's so that you can watch me doing things live. So I've got OCCT up here, which I'm just going to click on, and this can build up as we are talking. So AMD Ryzen Master at the bottom. This is their new kind of, they call it an overclocking tool, but when we talk about overclocking later on, I did it all manually in the BIOS. Manually, same thing. So I did it in the BIOS. But this is the best way at the present moment in time to monitor temperatures. So these are our temperatures just over here. And just, if you hadn't noticed it before, we'll just go back to the desktop ever so quickly, well, back to stock ever so quickly. And we can close this off, and you can see that 53, you can see the temperatures coming down, 52, 50, there we go, 49. So you can see us working the temperatures back down again. Now this is the only way that we can monitor our temperatures at the moment, and there's no way for us to be able to have a look at a minimum, a maximum, and an absolute value like you can with things like hardware monitor. AMD has always been funny with temperatures, and when we used to get temperatures with like hardware monitor and stuff in the background, I always used to think of it as a bit like a delta screen, as in like the temperature above the ambient room temperature, because you'd never be able to have a 20 degrees room and your CPU running at 8 or 12 degrees at idle, despite what people may have thought. But anyway, so we're back here. What we can have a look is up here, just at the moment, you can see that the voltages are going anything from 0.392 up to 1.482. This is totally stock and dancing around because of things like power saving and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to bang this on, and this is basically going to load up all 8 cores. And we can see our temperatures, we're around the kind of 48, 49 mark, and it will work its way up. And then this will let us know what we're going to be able to get. So I'm going to just clear the min-max averages on the hardware monitor, just quick, and it doesn't really take long. Once this jumps up, there we go. So we're using 90% memory and we're 100% CPU power. Now what you may have seen, if you've been paying attention, was just down here, the CPU speed actually dropped a bit. Because if you have a look here, just here, this is our current value. This is 3543 at the moment. Our minimum value is 3518, but our maximum value is 3693. Now 3.7 is what it should be in stock, and then it should turbo up to 4 gigahertz. But where we're loading all 8 cores, it doesn't. Now this did make me think that maybe I'm being a bit unfair because OCCT is really stressful. So why don't we just have a look at Cinebench then? Because, you know, AMD have been shouting about Cinebench. Okay, so Cinebench. Now annoyingly, this has already just flashed up to 4092. I was trying to get to the filming so I could show you it before it did do that. So Cinebench, what we can do is, we are going to have a look at this with CPU single core running. And this is the value that we need to be looking at. We need to be looking at these values down here. And you can see that this one is changing. They kind of switch between the two. quite a bit. We can have a look at temperatures as well. But the most important thing that we can grasp is that we are getting a single core going up to doing the basically almost 4.1 gigahertz. You can see them all slowly changing as it's doing one core, which is what we want. This is good. So we know a single core will boost up to beyond 4 gigahertz. That's cool because that's what it should do. It should boost up, but it is only a single core. If we put the multiple core on, this will whiz round really quickly. But we've got 3.6 gigahertz here. You can see it's just whizzing round. So that stays fairly level, 3.6. That is absolutely fine. Moving changes over here so that we can clear the min, max and average. Run it again, clear the min, max and average. So basically 3.6. So when you load all of the cores, every single one of the cores up with a bench like Cinebench, it will run at basically 3.7 gigahertz. If you run something immensely stressful, then you can actually, like OCCT or other, maybe even other rendering benchmarks, you know what I mean, you can get a dip. So it goes from 3.7 down to about 3.6, so you can lose somewhere between 100 and 200 megahertz on something immensely stressful. So strangely, back to OCCT is to talk about temperatures at stock. What we got for a maximum temperature, and OCCT is a really nice way of doing it because we can set it to turn off at certain temps. We can also set times and how we want to put it, how much memory. So it's a really easy, nice way for us to test it. Now, when we did this, we were getting somewhere between 63 and 64 degrees, as you can see here, 63 degrees. And that is the fans are now pretty much running at about 1500 RPM. So their maximum speed is 1800 RPM, so they are spinning quite fast to keep it at those sort of temperatures. But you did see that there's only about 20 degrees difference between the idle and then the stock. So this is all pretty good. But like I said, the one thing that we do need to kind of stress is the current clock speed is 3.6 gigahertz, and it does actually say just in there on the bench you can see 3.6. If I was to turn the benchmark off, you'll see it jump back up again, and there you go, you see it jumped up to 3.7. So if you do run something really stressful, it does have the ability to do that. But the most important thing that I did want to show you by doing this today is if you may think that you're getting nearly 4.0, nearly 4.1 gigahertz with your XFR, because you've got 4 gigahertz boost and the XFR is taking us up to that other 92 megahertz. And it does look like it's doing all of the cores, but it only ever does them one at a time. You never get them all at once, and if you've got a lot of load on there, it won't be going up at all. It's only really single threaded stuff. So really the answer to getting your 4.1 boost all the time is actually overclocking. Okay, so this benchmark has only been running for 3 minutes nearly now. But our temperature is 78.5. If we let it run over 30 minutes, then it creeps up to about 82 degrees. But you can hear the fans running, and they are now running flat taps. So despite these now not reading properly, I think it's on this one, they are run 18, there we go, 890 RPM. So they're on flat taps now. So the system is trying to keep it cool. So it does get quite warm, it will go up into the 80s. Weird thing is though, is I'm actually using 1.4 volts. The load line calibration is all over not all over the place, but is boosting it up a little bit, despite it only being on the first level. But it's, we've technically been able to put by using manual volts, we've been able to stop it spiking right up, which is what the system seems to want to do on its own, especially with the XFR. So technically now with this overclock, we're actually using less volts at times. But obviously when we were running OCCT before, it was reducing the volts, and it was down clocking a little bit, so it wasn't going to be pulling as much power, and it wasn't going to be getting as hot, which is why I think it managed to keep the temperature in check. don't know whether that's something AMD has built into it, so it does realise it's being put under a lot of stress. Not necessarily by a testing tool like this, but it's just a way for it to, like I said, use less power, not create as much heat. But by going manual, we're obviously putting it under more stress. So 80 odd degrees. One of the reasons why it's a bit weird though is the fans are going absolutely crackers over there in the corner, blowing loads and loads out. And normally, if I had a CPU that was at 80 degrees and these fans were like this, there would be absolute plumes of heat coming out of the top. And weirdly, there's not. There doesn't seem to be a great deal of heat coming out. Now that then made me think, well, maybe my CPU's not right. So I asked AMD, and just to be clear, before you say, you know, your CPU's not doing this properly, or you've not mounted the cooler properly, or blah, 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 blah. I asked AMD, and I said 1.4 gigahertz, and I said 82 degrees to 85 degrees, depending on how long we run the benches and all that sort of stuff. And AMD did confirm those temperatures are about right. It's not excessively high. So they said that's where we would expect them to be. So, you know, above 80 is normal. Now, you're thinking to yourself, 4 gigahertz, is that it? 4.1 was possible, but not with all of the benchmarks. It seemed to fall over about the 25-minute mark. It was kind of a bit hit and miss. A lot of the benches would pass. It was certainly fine for games, but we couldn't get it running with a very, very stressful test like this. It would eventually just black screen and then turn itself off. So we went back to 4 gigahertz. Now you'd think because of the XFR was running one of the cores at 4.1 that we would lose performance, but we've actually gained performance across the board. The overclock was always marginally better than stock. In some of the benches, it was monumentally better. So one of the things that I can say is the XFR, in its nature, going above that 4 gigahertz mark up to 4.9, it doesn't really do anything. You're much better off having a decent, all of the cores at 4 gigahertz across the board, because when you think about it, what you've effectively done is you've not underclocked, well, you have underclocked a core, but you've effectively overclocked the other 7, and you're making sure that benchmarks, if they are multi-threaded, can use a full 4 gigahertz. And from what I'm hearing from talking to other media and again SIs, I have heard that 4 gigahertz is good with decent volts, which is what we've gone for here. If we'd have put a lot more volts through, we may have got into the 4.1 gigahertz range, but temps would have been insane. Now what you also need to think about is we've got 79 degrees here at the moment, it's slowly working its way up, but we've got the fans on 100%. You could not live with this if this was your rendering rig. You can hear it in the background, it's going absolutely crackers. So I've gone with the 1.4 volts, as like I said, we've overclocked the other 7 cores, and this is normal before you think something's gone wrong. We've overclocked the other 7 cores, and like I said, we've got a really, really nice boost. But what this does tell us is that if you do want to overclock these processors, 3.7 to up to 4 might not sound like a massive deal, but it's more the fact that you are going to need to have some properly good tuning, and we're going into kind of the conclusion stage now. But you know, we've covered a lot about the XFR, the boost, the stop speed. Sometimes they can go down, and the fact that you do need to kind of get your hands on stuff to make sure they are all at 4, because as I've tried to explain, if it does say 4.1 very briefly, it's only 1 core. So we've covered all of this. It's now time for us to get on, because I have a lot of graphs for you. Okay, so first things first. If you are interested in the graphs, and I genuinely hope that you are, because you do need to go and see these, we have put so much extra time into making sure that we have the old 4, 6 and 8 cores in the graph for comparison. Because I'm going to assume that a lot of you that are going to be watching this video are sat there with an AMD system wondering to yourself, should you be upgrading? Is it good? Is all the hype valid? You know, was it really worth it, or have they kind of overcooked it again? So we went to all that extra, and now I'm going to show you what I can in these graphs. But we have a massive plethora of graphs on the website. So if you're interested in this product as a possible purchase, I would say to you, if you're genuinely thinking about spending £500 or $500 on the 1800X plus a board, we'll say that you're going to spend an average $200 or £200 on that. then your memory, then a good cooler, because you're going to need one, as I've shown you. That's a big investment. So sitting through my waffling video and then going to have a look at some of my graphs, it's not going to take that long out of your life when you think to yourself how long it would take you to earn it. Unless you're Bill Gates, obviously. But anyway, power draw, because this was a big thing with AMD. It always has been. We've always kind of gone, it's hot, it uses too much power, it doesn't really do anything in the benches, it's like an i5, and I'm fed up with saying it. And I'm glad that these graphs are good. But power-wise, when I bring it up,